Welcome inside episode 690 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. And after a successful end to the Father's Trip, the Ottawa Senators are back home to face the worst team in the NHL.
And Marc Methot is back on the Locked On Senators podcast. He tells us about his dad trip experiences back when he was playing, his trip to Jamaica, and how the Senators D-Corps is holding up right now.
How they're holding up now, and we reminisce about Wade Redden, who will be inducted into the Ring of Honor. This episode is brought to you by Farm to Fork. Visit farm2forkdelivery.ca today and taste the Farm to Fork difference. You will never go back to grocery store meats. This is the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Thank you for making Locked On Senators your first listen on this Monday, December 12th. The show is free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube, where the best way you can help the show grow is to like every video by clicking the thumbs up, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the Locked On Senators channel. The road to 5,000 continues, and put that notification bell on so that you know when the postcast goes live. We do a post-game show after each and every Ottawa Senators game. It's presented by the Glebe Central Pub, and make sure you're going over to lockedon.senators on Instagram, where we have a giveaway going on right now with Farm to Fork. They are giving away a Christmas dinner for four people. It's a $100 value. You can get it right now. Head over to our Instagram. We've got it pinned so you can't miss it. LockedOn.Senators. We love our friends over at Farm to Fork. They hooked up Lalim's Martian. They hooked up Mark Methot with some steaks, and you can go get yours too. Farm2forkdelivery.ca. Pilsy, the vibes are high. 5-2-1 in their last 8 games. Now, they haven't really made up any ground in the Eastern Conference standing. 3 points games, they're just handing them out like candy these days. But the process is there, and now we're starting to see some results.
Yeah, and that's exactly why kind of the, not word of the day, Ross, but phrase of the day.
Hit me with that again, please.
The phrase of the day, cautiously optimistic. And Marc Methot says that many times in our interview, and that's kind of where we stand. And he's kind of in the same spot as us, Ross. We're saying, look, playoffs are so far away, but we don't want to tank. Let's take this one day at a time. Let's have little mini stories to try to fight for, to try to give morale boosts to the fans. Last game, winning 3-2 in Nashville with the dads in attendance. That was a good one. You don't want to lose all three. Now, coming up against the Ducks, the worst team in the NHL. The Sens already beat them 5-1 earlier on the road, and it's Wade Redden, a Ring of Honor night, so we want to get a win there. Next game is first game up against the Habs.
Must win.
Declared it a must-win game. So this is how we're moving along with our season here. We're trying not to get too high or too low. We're going to stay in a game-to-game situation, and we are cautiously optimistic about this team.
I'm a week away from boots on the ground in Winnipeg, and I'll be on the call for Belleville at Manitoba this upcoming weekend. And we don't think that Rourke Chartier will be in Belleville's lineup. The latest call-up for the Ottawa Senators. They do have a couple game time decisions. We're going to get to the lineups here very soon. And then we've got half an hour plus with Mark Methot coming up in segments 2 and 3. But Pilsy, Rourke Chartier, we were kind of banging the table. Get Crooker up here. Get Igor Sokolov. They bring up a centerman. And a centerman who's third in the AHL in goals with 14.
Man, Rourke Chartier was the right choice here. I was really banging the drum for Igor. I'm sorry, I'm going to continue to say it. It's not Crooker's time yet. I think he needs to stay down in Belleville. But for me, it was between Sokolov and Chartier. I love that they're giving Chartier a chance here. And I don't want to spoil it because he may come up in one of my segments later on as we do the game preview. But I'll just say, for now, Rourke Chartier has definitely earned a chance to play a couple games in the NHL here.
Yeah, I completely agree. And not only that, but he had a great training camp too. Like I think he scored a couple goals in the preseason.
DJ highlighted him saying, yeah, this guy looks good here. And I think
What's that? Where did DJ do that?
Oh, on this show, in
Right.
fact. Go back and check out that interview. But he's a guy, if you're not following along with Belleville, that's fine. He's someone that he's not a flashy prospect, but he has been chugging along nicely, and I'll hit you with those stats later on.
Yeah, so Rourke Chartier, like he was, I think, a pretty decent prospect at one point in his career, but concussion issues in San Jose. Ultimately, he finds himself, I believe it was an AHL only deal initially. And then he got signed to a 2A contract, did not play in the COVID shortened season, then plays for the Marlies, doesn't produce at all, comes to Belleville, 25 points in 33 games last year, and led the team. Well, the playoffs were over in the blink of an eye, but 2 points in 2 games there. And now, 19 points in 24 games with Belleville. So I'm happy for him. And I like how they're not just bringing him up and throwing him on the fourth line as we can transition this into the Ottawa Senators lines for today's game. However, there are a couple question marks, and I have literally put question marks on the page. And the reason for that is Alex DeBrincat and Cam Talbot were both missing from this morning's skate. Neither of them are feeling particularly well. We know there's tons of bugs going around right now, so they will both be game time decisions. We know the top line's not going anywhere. Tim Stützle between Brady Tkachuk and Claude Giroux. Second line, Shane Pinto. And, well, Dylan Gambrell was skating in DeBrincat's spot. I wasn't comfortable putting him on this lineup chart, so instead I went with the question mark. Next, Alex DeBrincat, Drake Batherson, who scored an absolute beauty for the game winner against Nashville on a breakaway, a little chip over the glove of UC Saros. He's at right wing. The third line, here it is, Rourke Chartier in between Tyler Mott and Parker Kelly. And the fourth line, Mark Kastlick between Derek Brassard and Austin Watson. On defense, no changes. Shabbat Zaitsev, Sanderson Hamonic, and Brandstrom with Nick Holden. The other question mark, Talbot, or will we see Anton Forsberg? The Senators do have an extra defenseman up right now. Dylan Hetherington is that guy. Game 28, Pilsy. What do you see? What do you like about this lineup? What's your 4-1-1?
It's more what I don't like about this lineup. Unfortunately, this, again, stoked for Rourke Chartier, but this bottom six still is very concerning. The fact that they still want to start Talbot, even though he's not feeling well, I think at this point I would just say, hey, take the night off, get better, and we'll put Forsberg in. No offense, and the Ottawa Senators aren't really a team that can do this, as they're usually the team that has this done to them, but you can circle this matchup and be like, this is an easier matchup. We can get our 1B goalie in here and just give Talbot the night off. That's how I would approach that here. But other than that, this is kind of what we expected with this Ottawa Senators lineup with Matthew Joseph out. Sure, he only has 2 goals this season, but it does change the offensive firepower that bottom six has. And thank goodness, Ross, that Travis Hamonic isn't on the injury report after taking a stick to the face from his very own teammate, Thomas Chabot, not even on the ice, on the bench.
Yes, we talked with Marc Methot about that as well. Cam Talbot was in goal a couple weeks ago. What started this 5-2-1 stretch against the Anaheim Ducks? He made 31 saves on 32 shots in that effort. The Anaheim Ducks are not a good hockey team. And I'm not usually the type of guy who comes in and it's like, they're bad, they're this, they're that. I like, kind of either giving more analysis or just kind of looking at the bright side. But I watched them live in Winnipeg last weekend. They got up to a 2-0 lead, and then Winnipeg scored 5 unanswered goals to win the game. One of those goal scorers, though, for Anaheim was Jakob Silfverberg, believe it or not. And now he finds himself on the fourth line for the Anaheim Ducks. Before we pull up those lines, Pilsy, give me your locked-on player tonight for the Ottawa Senators.
All right, it's finally here. My locked-on player for the Ottawa Senators is Rourke Chartier. Glad to have him up playing with Ottawa, even if it's for a short while here, because I said I had a couple of stat nuggets for you, and here I'll hand them out now. He has been on fire in Belleville. Ross, in his last 12 games, he has points in 10 of those games, and he was on a 8-game point streak where a lot of those are goals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those 8 game point streaks, he scored a goal in. So this guy's just playing too hot not to give him a chance up in Ottawa. And I mentioned the offensive firepower kind of takes a hit with no Joseph out. Well, you get a bit of a boost with Rourke Chartier here. So that is why he is my locked-on player. And Ross, you even had a fun stat about Rourke Chartier. He has a goal up against the Anaheim Ducks. So Now's the time. Bring him up while he's hot. Let's go. Rick Chartier, my locked on player.
It's his only NHL goal. How cool is that, right?
Hey.
Like, it's not like he's got a lot to choose from. 13 NHL games for Rourke Chartier. Tonight will be his first game outside of San Jose. So
Yep.
I knew that he'd played in San Jose. So I was like, you know what? Pacific Division, let's take a look. Where did he score that goal? Of course, it was against the Anaheim Ducks. So can he score again against the Ducks? We'll see. But my locked on player is Drake Batherson because we knew defensively there was a lot to be desired. We were hard on him on that OT goal. Was it the OT goal? Yes, against Dallas. Didn't love him blowing the zone there. But hey, if he's gonna be a sub defensive player, which I don't think he is as a whole, but if he's playing like that, you got to be putting up points. And in this 8-game stretch where Ottawa has points in 6 of them, he has 9. He has 2 goals, 7 assists, and he's on a 4-game point streak rather, where he has 5 points. So I'm looking for Drake Batherson, especially if DeBrincat's out of lineup. They need secondary scoring. That was our word of the day, phrase of the day last week, was secondary scoring. They're finally starting to get some. And now DeBrincat's out of lineup, even though shout out Dante Fabro for getting DeBrincat on the board with that beautiful tap in on his own goalie on that pass from DeBrincat. But especially if he's out, it's going to be a big night for Drake Batherson, and he needs to produce. He's got the goggles on. Hopefully that gives him some 20/20 vision going into tonight's game.
I mean, ironically, the goggles are meant to not give you vision as they're meant to cover your eyes while you're getting a spray tan, but hopefully that works out for you, Ross.
Thanks. He also had 2 assists in the game against Anaheim down in California. Key to victory: do not underestimate your opponent. They get paid too, Pillsy. That's the old famous cliche. They're paid to play hockey as well, but frankly, the skill isn't there as we run through their lines. And then I'll get your key to victory and your lookout player. It's Zegras, Henrique, and Terry. It's Ryan Strome with Frankie Vetrano and Jason Magna. It's Mason McTavish. Hometown hero comes back. And he'll be playing his first NHL game in Ottawa. Obviously, good Ottawa Valley boy from Carp. We got Max Jones and Brett Leeson and Sam Carrick in between Max Comtois and Jakob Silverberg. On defense, it's Cam Fowler, it's Dmitry Kulikov, it's Simon Benoit. You stay away from Timmy, old man. Remember, they got into it a little bit last game. John Klingberg still in Anaheim for now on that 1-year deal. And Urho Vakanainen, who I would like to point out, I spelt that properly on the first try as we were going through this with Kevin Shattenkirk. In goal, will it be Anthony Stolarz or will Lucas Dostal get his first NHL start? You and I got to follow him closely when we were in the COVID-shortened year. I know your Finnish scouting trips. He was playing alongside Roby Jarventi and Lassie Thompson with Eels. This guy is an absolute stud. Scored a goal this year in the AHL, Pilsy.
That is awesome. Hey, hashtag goalie friendly show. We love to see them get some goals here. But
can I ask you something super weird about him as well? I don't know. And here, I'm going to pull up a photo. He's one of these goalies who sprays his cage 2 different colors.
Ooh, interesting. We've had a lot of cage talk on this show. I've made it very clear that I love the gold cage that Forsberg has, and I wish more goalies would do that. So I'm interested to see this. I haven't seen this.
Okay, we're going to pull it up right now. I'm pulling up. It's obviously a little less drastic with the San Diego Gulls, but you see it's black and white.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind that. And hey, if you can distract players in any way, shape, or form, if that works, sweet.
But certainly that's one, but I got to pull this up quickly because, I mean, Lucas Dostal, you hear a chrome cage or the 2-color cage, you're like, wait, but it's just kind of black. Like, is it even that different? But look at this, dude. Like, the yellow and green, that's jarring.
I like it. That's awesome, though.
The Eels logo is undefeated, too. The Lynx, it's literally like Lenny the Lynx went on a bender, and then there he is.
Yeah, and that logo we learned was made in the 60s, and they have not touched it since. So it's too good to go. Absolutely.
Love it.
Yeah.
Your locked on player, your key to victory.
My lookout player for the Anaheim Ducks, and I might have had the same guy before, but I'm going to keep it here. It's John Klingberg. I mean, this guy signs a 1-year ticket to a terrible team. It's very obvious what's going on here. He wants a little time in the sun, hopefully boost his stats on a weaker decor, and then gets traded to a contender and then signs a big ticket contract in the offseason. So he's got a long way to go if that plan's going to work out for him, though, Ross, because in 21 games, he only has 8 points. He's a -14, and this guy's used to being a power play specialist. Only 3 points on the power play in 21 games, and I'm sure he's getting the time there in Anaheim. So I'm going to be looking out for John Klingberg here because he's going to want to boost those stats if he's going to make kind of the grand plan that I'm sure him and his agent had set out for this year.
And your key to victory?
My key to victory is there. We talked about it. The Ottawa Senators power play has been really good. Even their penalty kill has been pretty decent here, but you got to keep that foot on the gas pedal. Ross, you mentioned don't play down to your opponents. Well, this is the worst special teams in the league. The Ducks only have a 66.6 penalty kill and then a 15% power play. So dominate on the special teams. That is my key to victory here. We know 5-on-5 hasn't exactly been their thing, but this is a chance to dominate on the special teams.
And they're undisciplined too. Ottawa had 8 power plays when they were in Anaheim. They scored on 3 of them.
Cookies.
Tim Stützle and Mathieu Joseph, who of course will not be in tonight's lineup week to week. I think about 2 weeks with injury. My lookout player, it's got to be Mason McTavish. I know he's born in Zurich, raised in the area, and he's one of the 2021 draft picks who they were like, nah, he's not going World Juniors. We need him in the NHL. He's got 14 points in 28 games on just an awful team. Like, his game, nobody impressed me in Winnipeg. He really didn't either, except for, Troy Terry is a guy to watch, almost point per game, good player. But I'll go with Mason McTavish. I love the storyline. But, guys, don't worry. He has scored an NHL goal. I know everyone's going to be worried, another first goal against. No, he's got a few cookies already. So, but yeah, it'll be fun to watch. I'm sure he'll have a lot of family, friends in attendance. So, Mason McTavish, my lookout player. Sens and Ducks, make sure you're locked on at 7 p.m. Eastern. Game starts at 7:30 on the NHL app. It says 7:30, but the ceremony for Wade Redden will come before that. We get into that with Meth and more. But Pilsy, today's episode is brought to you by...
We have a couple sponsors in today's episode, and it's our presenting sponsor, Ross, our newest sponsor here on the Locked On Senators podcast. It's our friends over at Farm to Fork. We got to tell you all about them because they are a premium meat and seafood delivery service. There's so many things to love. First off, Ross, I love that everything is flash frozen right off the butcher's table so it stays fresh. Then, to make it even more convenient, individually vacuum sealed so you only take out what you need and what you want. That's great. And the best of all, it's right in the website name, Farm to Fork Delivery. Couple clicks on your computer and you can have these premium meats brought to you if you live in Ottawa, Montreal, or the GTA. There's so many things to like. They got ribeyes, sirloins. The tomahawk steaks are 3 pounds. They're absolutely massive. They've got chicken, any kind of chicken you want. They've got seafood. Wild caught seafood is also very delicious. So you got to check out the website today, guys. That's www.farm2forkdelivery.ca. And we're going to hook you guys up with a promo code. Why not? 15% off when you use promo code ZUB15. That's ZUB15, ZUB15. So go to the website today, www.farm2forkdelivery.ca. Use promo code ZUB15 for 15% off your next order. Guys, it's Farm to Fork. Taste the difference. You will never go back to grocery store meats.
And we also want you to go to Instagram, lockedon.senators, follow the prompt and get yourself in the draw that we're going to do on Wednesday after the Montreal Canadiens Ottawa Senators game. We are giving away Christmas dinner for 4 thanks to our friends at Farm to Fork. Farm to Fork, ZUB15 promo code, because we want to remind you that 2 is a number 2 in farm2forkdelivery.ca. Today's episode is also brought to you by SimpliSafe, especially if you have Farm to Fork in your freezer, you need to protect your house even more than you would on any given day. So why not go to America's #1 home security system? It's SimpliSafe. It's that simple to arm your home. Make sure there's no intruders, nobody coming in, nobody doing anything, any funny business. You will be alerted right away. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology, and it's exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real so you can get higher priority police response. SimpliSafe is whole home security with advanced sponsors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you when the threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. And it all costs under $1 a day, less than half the price of traditional home security systems. So don't miss your chance to save big on my favorite home security system. Get 40% off any new system at simplisafe.com/LockedOnNHL. That's simplisafe.com/LockedOnNHL. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. And just like Sens fans felt safe when number 3 was on the ice, protecting the investments, protecting the front of the net. And here he is, recurring guest on Locked On Senators. Here's Marc Methot. All right, we now welcome on a very good friend of the show. It's been a while. We got lots to catch up on with Marc Methot, former Ottawa Senators defenseman. You can find him on the TSN broadcast. Will we see it tonight?
You'll see it tonight.
Nice.
All right. So we'll talk a little Wade Redden after, but first things first, how's the trip to Jamaica? On.
Wagwan, Mark. Wagwan.
Yeah, Wagwan. What's up? It was good. You know what? It's not this was my second time going. We stayed in Ocho Rios. Last time I was there was 10, 12 years ago when I was on my own, and we stayed in Negril. Negrill's a little nicer. Ocho Rios is a little rougher. The standard's not quite the same, but we still had a great time. I went with my brother and my sister-in-law, and took it easy though. We weren't partying hard. It was sort of an easy week. I spent I want to say half the days just in the water. I'm a lunatic, so I love the benefits of the salt water. So I'm in there doing laps up and down,
Nice.
shamelessly in front of everybody. And when I got there, I had a nasty cold. So it was my goal to nuke this thing. So I'm vitamin D, salt water. And I was in the water, blowing my nose. It was insane. 24 hours in, the cold was gone.
There you go.
So there you go. Yeah. But it was a great trip. Thanks for asking.
That's the meth get well quick. Just go to Jamaica, get some salt water in you, get the mimosas in you for vitamin C as well. You're probably looking good there. Nice.
Yep.
Well, we're
glad
good. You're back because didn't you have some troubles on your way there too? You lost your lost your luggage or you didn't. Sorry. No, you didn't. The airline did. These are the kind of things I was joking to Ross only happen to you. It seems like no travel experience can go smoothly.
But it's only been recently. So it's that freaking Pearson airport. So we had a good layover, and it wasn't just my bags. It was my wife's. It was my brother, my sister-in-law, and a bunch of other people that had connected through Ottawa, from Ottawa through Toronto. So we all get there and our bags don't show up on the belt. So we're okay,
here we go.
This is the first time it's ever happened to me. Right. So we get in, we have to fill out a report. So we spent about 2 extra hours at the airport after we landed. Don't get our bags for another 36 hours after the fact. So we're buying stuff at the gift shop and all that stuff. Anyway, me being a high functioning, stressed individual to begin with, this wasn't good for me. Right. So This is the worst possible way to start off a trip, but we finally got everything. But my watch was stolen out of my bag, my Bose speaker, my wife's perfume. I didn't make a big stink of it because what do? A couple of fellas over there right now in Montego Bay where we landed are rocking one of my watches and listening to a broken Bose speaker. They probably don't know how to, finagle the charge cable. Is a
Jokes
special
on
way
them,
to use the cable. But that's what happens sometimes when you travel. And, I blame Pearson Airport. Not that it matters, not that they're listening, but here we are.
Yeah, well, Pillsy's got a few flights coming out of there soon. I avoided it like the plague for our
You have to.
trip.
Brutal.
Absolutely brutal. So when we left you off, we said, how many wins are the Sens going to get? They had New Jersey at home and then the road trip out west, and you nailed it. I went back and listened. You said 2 wins and a loser point. But I guess they didn't.
Did I call?
No,
Ross, did I call the loser?
Pillsy called the loser point. So you went.
Oh, good.
3. You called it right, and right off the bat, that New Jersey game was an absolute stinker. I think they got booed off home ice, but in all, since then, since the Anaheim game, if we want to pinpoint a turnaround, maybe Brady Tkachuk starts throwing some knuckles against a guy who hit Sanderson. Now he's got 2 big fights under his belt. Where are you at over the last couple of weeks now that you caught up with Ottawa?
Cautiously optimistic, and I'm not talking about playoffs. I'm just talking about the team getting wins, despite this little streak that they've been on, if you want to call it a streak, they haven't really made any headway in the standings because everyone else is moving, right? So this is why it's so critical when you start the season, if you have playoff aspirations, to do lots of damage early on and to be consistent. I know I'm stating the obvious. This isn't groundbreaking news. Everyone's following along. But I think for me, if I'm in that dressing room right now, playoffs aren't in my mind. I'm just focusing on the next game. That sounds very cliche, but it applies here because it can get demoralizing when you get into the dressing room, and they usually have a board when you walk into the players' entrance side of the room where there's the standings, right? And they have it listed. It's constantly being updated. And just making eye contact with that and seeing at the bottom of the barrel can be deflating, right? I mean, you always take pride in being a pro athlete. And it's not just satisfaction of being there at that level. It's succeeding at that level. It's getting out there for pregame warmups, having that confidence and swagger, knowing that you're better than the team across from you. When you don't have that, your mind starts to play a lot of tricks on you, and you start having these inner conversations, and you start worrying more about perhaps your own game versus the team game. And things can derail pretty quickly if you're not, I guess if you don't have proper leadership and all that. So anyway, for me right now, if I'm a leadership core in that group, in that team, I'm just focusing on the game tonight, for example. Focus on Anaheim. What can you do to beat them? You beat them 5-1 on the road last week or whenever it was. Now you're playing them tonight. Another opportunity. These are 2 must-win games, right? These 2 home games. And I don't like using those examples. I don't like saying must-win games before Christmas, but they are. These really are. And it's not just about, holding on to those potential playoff aspirations. It's about just keeping your fan base engaged. I mean, that to me is a big one. You want fans coming in to watch you play in March, right? You want them to still give a shit at that point. So, these 2 games are huge. They're winnable games. The schedule is not very favorable afterwards. I think they have a 3-4. I had it written down, like Detroit, mini Winnipeg, Detroit, and Minnesota. Busy. Those are back-to-backs. And then they play the following, the next night, making it a 3-4. That's a tough schedule. So yeah, I mean, to finish off my point, this is huge tonight. This is one of those games for them that is a must win in my opinion. And you mentioned Brady earlier on there, Ross, and how he willed his way through. I mean, you looked at the Dallas game, you watched the Nashville game. He's had some great performances. Obviously, he's not alone. That second line was terrific the other night on Saturday, or I should say in the afternoon. So a lot of pressure on the top 6, and I'm looking at them to carry this team moving forward.
Any other must-win games you want to announce? Because I'll say next Tuesday is a must-win game for me personally. Boots on the ground, but this team, we laughed because we said like our YouTube comments the first couple weeks of the season, we're like, hey, can you guys like lay off? I think we had 5 must-win games in the first 10.
Yeah.
But hey, the home opener was a must-win game.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then Arizona, your first Saturday, you have to beat Arizona on your first Saturday.
Right. Yeah. And it's bizarre because the way they've been playing, and I know I read Ian's article this morning in The Athletic. It was great. Really, he's fantastic, by the way. And
best.
It was a really good piece where they because he breaks down all the underlying numbers. My dumb ass doesn't pay attention to the analytics. Same. I'm watching, well, that was a good breakout. I'm going to talk about that at the intermission. Like that's what I do. But Ian dives a little deeper, and he's talking to Micah and a couple other analytics people.
He's scuba diving and we're snorkeling.
Yeah, great analogy. Jamaica. That was fantastic. So, but that's what happens. And in the article this morning that I was reading, he brought up some of those underlying numbers that we've been talking about now for weeks about how, analytically speaking, their possession numbers are really good versus, when we were the pesky Sens, that's what Ian talked about, how, 4 years ago, how teams were just expecting to win pretty well every night against the Ottawa Senators, but we'd find ways to win, right? Like bullshit ways. Someone who had to stand on his head, couple lucky goals, bounces, but things were just going and working for us. Now you've got the numbers backing you, but they're snake bitten right now. They just can't score when they need to 5-on-5. Alex DeBrincat's struggling right now, getting the goals. So but the one highlight I will say, the one area, obviously, and everyone knows it, the power play's clicking. What fantastic news. I can't remember the last time the power play for the Ottawa Senators was running as high as it has been. So there are some positives here. I think for me, and this is touching on the point that I made in the last conversation we just had, you just need some victories for the fan base. Yep. Keep them engaged so they keep coming into the building, because I'm telling you guys, there's nothing worse than playing in front of a half-filled building. I mean, you walk out there for warm-ups, and it's just desolate. You don't see a lot of heads in the stands. it can be tough for a player mentally. And I know I'm not trying, this isn't me kind of saying, feel bad for the players. I know they're making great money, but from a player's point of view, when you step out on the ice and you see a packed house, there's nothing better.
Definitely. Yeah. And speaking of kind of like little morale wins, let's take it back to the last win, the Dads trip. It's a 3-game trip for the Dads. They're in Ottawa, LA, and Nashville. They lose the first 2 games of those. Ross and I kind of did the old adage, well, the Dads probably aren't mad, but they're probably disappointed, and that's not what you want. But they win that last game, so that's got to be a big boost. Mark, were you ever involved in any of the Dad's trip stuff, and how do you think that played for you guys as well on the team?
Let me tap in the rebound for you. They lost to LA. They're in Dallas. I know you meant to say that.
Yeah. No. And that's fine. But their Dallas game, I mean, although the finish wasn't terrific, you still get a point. So, I think for me, from my experience doing these dad trips, it was always very special. I know I'm stating the obvious, but having my old man, grew up a farmer, hardworking, blue collar guy, police officer for a long time, was never exposed to the lifestyle that we were experiencing at the NHL level. And I can speak to even my days in Columbus. The way we traveled maybe wasn't the way it is now per se, but still the standard was high. But it's the little things, right? Like seeing the look on my dad's face when he stepped on the plane, to see the stuff we were eating, the food trays, hearing the odd guy bitch about, oh, they didn't bring the egg rolls that we like this time or stuff like that. I mean, he's just shaking his head. And then the hotels and, the coaching staff would always spend a dinner with the dads, usually depending on the schedule, and they would exchange stories. And just seeing a side of my old man that I never really knew existed either. Like he'd become the life of the party when we'd go on the road. The best one was when I was in Dallas. When I was in Dallas, my dad came in knowing that I just had knee surgery. I wasn't going to be making the trip. It was a Vegas trip, my first year in Dallas. And sure shit, my dad still flew into Dallas, went on the dad's trip without me, had a great time. Guys were sending me videos of my old man dancing with some of the dancers in this private room where they had their dinner and entertainment. Like it was insane. So the dads, when they're together, they're having beers, they're telling war stories. They can relate on so many levels, having, players brought up, under their wing and having their sons playing together now, which is pretty cool. So it's a lot of fun. My final note on that would be, it's highly motivating, especially having your dad there. I mean, knowing that they're in the stands and they're watching you, which you were used to doing when you were a kid playing minor hockey, you always knew your dad was in the stands. You always looked at how he was reacting after you scored or made a mistake. You didn't want him kind of bowing his head or sighing in the stands. That's just the reality. And so it's almost like clockwork. Anytime the old men come on the road with the guys, you can expect a pretty good performance, a really good effort. And we saw that particularly in Nashville. I thought they played really well. It was a heavy game, and I'm sure the dads had a large part in that. Looking up at your dad at T-Mobile Arena is a little different than Poplinski Arena, though, eh? 100%, man. And it's so true, though. Like my dad, for example, like he was never a screamer. Like he'd always sit up there, but you could feel his presence, because he was I had a very strict old man. And my dad has calmed down. He's mellowed a lot now with age. He just turned 75 last week. But yeah, like it's like, he was a strict dude, and he'd let me hear about it on the ride home. And it's not like he was sitting there screaming at me, but he would tell me exactly how he thought I played, particularly in my later years, in my teens. And I would listen. And he did a great deal for me to get to where I'm at now. And sometimes he'd have to give me the cold, hard truth, and I'd deal with it accordingly, and I'd move on and I'd get better. And that's the way he handled things. Love it. So obviously Ottawa's got a few legendary dads. We did the quick math guys on this show. The Ottawa Senators franchise in the 30 years of existence, I believe with playoffs, it's like 2,600 games. Jeff Sanderson and Keith Tkachuk are at 2,450 games. Insane. Combined. Yeah. Now, so imagine having those two guys added to your roster as adults there with the dads, and all the stories that they're going to have. And they've been there and they've done that. And I heard Dave Poulin talk about that this morning a little bit too, with the guys on 1200, where he was mentioning, they've been there, but they haven't necessarily experienced it the way the guys are now. Like the game's constantly changing and evolving, right? So the planes are a little bit better. The food's going to be a little bit better. The hotels, everything's just different. And it's thanks to those previous generations of players, right? So really cool. And another really last point was Pooley had mentioned, and I thought about it. It's the first time for dads, right? The first year dads that are experiencing it and seeing how they handle it, and seeing their eyes kind of light up at the way the whole experience rather is. So really cool stuff. Really neat that the team does that. And even better now that they've involved the moms. I heard Pierre mention, or DJ, it may have been DJ mentioned the moms trip will be next year. So that'll be a cool experience for them, because we all know how critical they are as well. So looking forward to seeing how they can experience it and hearing some stories for that.
And what was really cool too is you see that even the guys who maybe don't have their dads around, they're able to bring someone else. Travis Hamonic had his brother there. Super cool. Yeah. Speaking of Travis Hamonic, there was something happening on the D side of the bench we have to get into. And Wade Redden is being honored tonight into the Ring of Honor, one of the most legendary defensemen on Senators franchise history. But first, we got to tell you a quick word from our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is the #1 sports book for all things gambling at the Locked On Podcast Network. Do it responsibly, but do it well. And I do have to say with a grain of salt that Brady Tkachuk's shot total is now at 4.5. We had 3.5. It hit 20 out of 27 times. And you can go find that golden goose for yourself at betonline.net. We'll ask Martian about it in the postcast. I know he is in a puddle of tears right now. But you can get all the latest odds, trends, player performance props, all at betonline.net. We're the fastest, easiest way to get your betting fixed responsibly. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. It's betonline.net, where the game starts. You are Locked On Senators. I'm Ross Levitan alongside Brandon Piller, and we've got Marc Methot with us as well. It's a Sens game day, taking on the Anaheim Ducks. It's a big week at home to the Ducks and Montreal Canadiens. Ooh, not saying must win for both, but I'll say it. It's a must win. Then on the weekend at Detroit at 1 p.m. and at Minnesota at 2, a couple matinees. Meth, what do you think about the matinees? Are you a matinee guy?
I'm a huge matinee guy. Come on. Think about it. You're playing at 1. There's no pregame skate bullshit. You just get up, and there's no secret to it. I would just get up and I'd have a big pile of eggs with some toast and fruit. I'd just be pile driving the coffee.
Nice.
You get to the rink, you're feeling good about yourself because you know when the game ends, you get that win. You can go with the boys, you can have dinner. If you're married, you go with a few couples, you grab a nice meal. You're home at a good time, you get a normal night's sleep. I was always a big fan. I know some guys, I mean, Chris Neal was a prime example. I never understood it. He would, like, even on the road for a 1 p.m. or a 12 o'clock game, whatever it was, he had to have his chicken and pasta at like 7, like fucking 7 in the morning. I never understood it. Like, just an absolute psycho, eating, just sitting alone in the meal room. I'm like, most of us are still sleeping. Yeah. And this guy is eating his chicken and pasta with his ranch sauce or whatever it was.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And it had to be Nature Valley ranch sauce.
I mean, that is
with
the
best chicken. Yeah. It was just, yeah, it is a good one. But some guys just, they can't switch up their routines, right? They're so strict. And I mean, he wasn't alone. That's me. Nealer's the first
Noodles
guy
was talking about that too, Matt. He was, I think it was Gordon Miller was giving him a hard time being like, you still eat spaghetti and meatballs at like 7 in the morning. He's like, yeah, of course.
He's also apparently the strictest eater. Like he won't eat anything.
Yeah. Well, Noodles is a beauty. That surprises me, because just knowing him so well now and always talking to him, because we're always shooting the shit in the media room before the games and we talk on the phone. He's such a free spirit. Like he's one of the best guys in the business. Like, unquestionably. Awesome. And
great fan. His wife was my boss at TSN.
Yeah, and she's awesome. She's so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. And it just surprises me that he would have a strict routine like that. He strikes me for the type of guy that would just kind of do whatever. He'd free ball it on the fly and adapt. But guys like Chris Neal were just strict. And then you had the other guys like Carl, who couldn't give a shit about anything. He'd just go and be ready to play whenever he wanted to play, kind of thing. So you had two extremes, but it just goes to show you that the personalities, everyone's so different at that level, and whatever works for them, I'm all for it.
As long as Carl had his snooze, he'd be good to go for an afternoon game, eh?
I still like it. I used to chew a lot, and then my wife was on me hard, especially in a retirement. to quit. It was like a, especially around the kids too, which I understand just doesn't look really good. So I stopped, and they were those Swedish pouches, and
those are dangerous.
Eric. Yeah. And they're just so like, I throw a couple in after a game while I'm having a glass of wine on the plane, and you'd get this really strong buzz. It was great. A good way to relax. And
Carl's playing NHL hockey games with one hand.
So Eric is chewing it. Now, he wasn't chewing the Siberia. The Siberia stuff that I would use was very, very strong. Eric is using a different product, which I'm not condoning, by the way, to everybody out there. This isn't me glorifying what he does. And Eric knows it too, but Eric does it during games. He did it during games in Ottawa. And I'd look over and I'm like, how do you do that? Like, really, how do you do that? It's in your mouth. You've got tobacco in your mouth while you're getting hit in the corner. Like, but he didn't care. It was just part of his makeup. And I think to a degree, that's just what made him so great, right? Like, he's just so carefree, yet so competitive. It was like the perfect cocktail for success, mixed in, of course, with his natural ability. So anyway, yeah, Eric chews. Everyone knows it. You see him on TV all the time, playing with it in his mouth. And I don't recommend it. It's a nasty habit. It is terrible for your health. And we'll leave it at that.
Well, if Marc Methot and Daniel Alfredsson can both quit, if you're chewing out there, you can too. How about How about Alfie pulling out a piece of paper towel or he shoved up there in that interview with you guys?
Man, I'm telling you, it's very difficult to quit and kick that habit. It was hard for about a week, at least. Well, it lasted longer, but physically the effects of like the sweats at nighttime and all that stuff, it was really hard. And it's amazing how much you don't realize how addicted you are until you try to kick it. And then you're like, okay, yep, I had a problem. Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about carefree competitiveness, I don't know if that's how I described Thomas Chabot on the bench the other day, but have you ever had anything close to that where it's just all hell breaks loose on the bench? To anyone who had, if you haven't, I think Kevin Lee, Bring Back Lee, posted the video. It got 2.1 million views. People were picking it up left, right, and center. Thomas Chabot, I think he thought he was at the end of the bench, and he swung it. I thought he thought he was getting the glass. No, he got. He might have turned Travis Hamonick's eye into a glass.
It's just, for me, just watching it from a spectator's point of view now, it's just very cringe. And I don't mean cringe like shabby. That was cringe, bro. Like, it was. I'm not saying that. What I mean is just watching the play unfold, you're kind of like wincing a little bit, going like, oh, because I understand what he's going through. He's incredibly frustrated. But that was never something I did. I mean, maybe I slammed the door, maybe, but I mean, I had always compartmentalize it and just kind of hold it in a little bit and then take it out on another player the next shift when I'd go out there, if I had to take a run at a guy or something. But yeah, I watched it. I felt bad for Hamonic, of course. But that just reminded me of the Ballard swing on Bokun was like that was like, peak cringe / secondhand embarrassment, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, because blood coming out of his helmet
on the
he's
ice,
wearing a goalie mask, like it's
on
insane.
the ice in front of everybody. Like that's insane. Anyway, I feel bad for Shabby. I'm sure they laughed about it after the game.
That's a steak dinner though, right?
It's got to be something. I would assume a dinner would suffice. And that's assume that they run in the same circles on the road and they eat dinner together, because guys are very cliquey during the season. It's just the way it works. You end up with the same usual suspects when you're having dinner.
I mean, if Hamonic did that to Chabot, it might be grounds for a release of his contract, like just in terms of the importance of the player.
No bueno, not good.
Oh man, yeah, because we already know there's enough injuries on the back end, and we can kind of transition to that, as luckily Travis Hamonic did not break his jaw getting smashed in the face by Thomas Chabot, but Artem Zub, unfortunately, is out with a broken jaw. And Meth, I feel like we've been talking about Zub being out of the lineup a lot with you on these interviews. Like, that seems to be a constant theme here, but the difference here is last time when Zub was injured, okay, now it's time to bring up Jacob Bernard-Docker, and he does a good job filling in. Now Jacob Bernard-Docker is out with the high ankle sprain. So they're rolling with the veteran. Zaitsev is back after coming from Belleville. All accounts seem that he's playing better. DJ said his confidence is up. The boys gave him the goggles at the end of one game to give him a boost. You love to see that. What's your opinion on how this decor is now? And do you feel like maybe they need to take a look at bringing Lassie Thompson up similar like they did JBD, or do you think the veterans can kind of stand pat and hold things together for another week or two till they get some help?
Yeah, hot take. Lassie Thompson's not your answer. I mean, he's good. He's sorry. I shouldn't say it as dramatically. I shouldn't put it that way, but you're not really getting a significant upgrade. You could make an argument. People are going to be like, what are you talking about? Like Zaitsev's hasn't been playing very well, but lately he's not the liability that I've seen early on, particularly before he was sent down. So there's that. But again, when I use that term that I used at the start of the show, talking about the team in general, when I said cautiously optimistic, look at the right side on defense. You've got Zaitsev, Hamonic, and Holden. I mean, how long is that experiment going to last for? Right. So, if you bring up Thompson, is he the answer? He might be. I mean, I like his game, but he's still very inconsistent. And a lot of that is just being young, not super confident and not necessarily accustomed to playing at the NHL level on a consistent basis. The left side I don't mind Brandstrom's game right now. There are times, we saw it on the road trip, where he'll get beat off the puck. It could cost the team. It may not cost the team. He's very good with the puck on his stick. So he's got that going for him, which is great. I'm not worried about Sanderson. I'm not worried about Shabby. Sanderson's been, cool as a cucumber since the start of the season. Very consistent. You know what you're getting out of him. You can always count on him, assuming you are managing his minutes properly, because you don't want to burn the kid out. Yeah. We forget here, guys like Pinto, guys like Sanderson, they don't know what it's like to play 82 games. Mm-hmm. We haven't played a ton of hockey yet. I mean, relatively speaking, there's a ton left. So I'm hopeful that guys like Pinto and Sanderson will sustain. We're seeing the league change a lot. There's a lot more young youth in the NHL. So to see them playing the important minutes that they're playing isn't a total surprise if you compare it to a lot of other teams. So that's good. But yeah, that right side on D's a mess. And that's to no fault of anybody's at the moment. You can make an argument that should have been addressed in the summer. Easy to say that when you're sitting, in Manitic like I am, not having any responsibility whatsoever with the team, and not knowing what was available and what you could go after. You can make a counter argument to that and just say, well, look at Jersey. Look what they did. Great. And that's having the foresight of knowing who to go after, that's hanging out there on maybe the 4, 5, 6 range on another team that you could perhaps poach. But that's another conversation. So yeah, they're injury bugged right now. And then I've been there. I've broken my jaw. I know what Zub's going through. Now, have they officially ruled that a break? Like, is it a fracture?
He said it's a small fracture. I'm not going to take the micro fracture from Mark Stone back in the day. I don't know exactly, but they said a small fracture in his jaw.
Well, and I ask because there's a significant difference, right? Like when I broke mine, it was in Columbus and it was a mandibular fracture. So it broke in 2 spots. So it was displaced. So that was, I was locked in with my mouth shut, like literally wired shut for about 6 weeks. So I couldn't play until that was taken out. But it sounds to me like Zub's recovery may not be that long. It'll depend on his discomfort.
They gave him 2 to 3 week estimate.
There you go. Well, there you go. And I think I heard that too. And that's always subject to change. But for now, you're in survival mode. What's going to be where they may get exposed or after these next 2 games, right? So you're playing Anaheim tonight, not great. Playing Montreal, very young, inexperienced to a degree. It's a bit of a split on that team, but they're playing okay considering. But then afterwards, we talked about their schedule. I mean, Detroit, mini Winnipeg, Washington, Red Wings again. Like, it's not going to be very favorable. There's a lot of back-to-backs in there. So that's where a team like, and I'm saying this because you look at Ottawa's back end with some of the veterans that they have. I can speak to that. My later years, those back-to-backs were killer for me. Recovery wise, the second night after playing 20 some odd minutes with Eric on the night before, my legs were shot. It didn't matter how much water I drink after a game, the electrolytes, all that stuff. Your muscle tissue still breaks down. You still have to try to recover. You're older. Your recovery's not the same as an early 20-year-old. And so it's hard. You're in survival mode that next night. You're hoping that your backup can steal you a game, and you got to stay out of the box. So discipline's going to be big. They're going to have to insulate that back end as much as they can with really, really good F3s, high F3s coming back, helping out with back pressure and helping out that decor. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. I'm going to be, like I said, this is my 3rd time saying this, cautiously optimistic moving forward. If they can get to 500 by Christmas, it'll be a miracle. But I won't hold my breath. We'll put it that way. I'm trying not to be negative here, by the way. I'm trying to be very positive.
That's the Jamaican spirit in you right there. Title of today's show, Marc Methot is cautiously optimistic about the
There you go.
Ottawa
I know I'm
Senators.
using the term a shitload and I got to stop saying it.
No, well, you know what the Sens decor could use? It's Wade Redden. And I mean, the guy looks like he still could play tonight if he wanted to. He's going to be up in the Ring of Honor. And when it was announced, Pilsy and I had a full conversation, and it kind of feels like there's not one moment. Like, you know, with Alfie, it's the goal to send them to the Stanley Cup final. Like, there's certain moments with different players. Chris Neal has whether it's the Tanner Glass situation in 2017, but throughout his career, there's moments. But it really feels like for Wade Redden, it was more the sum of everything he did in Ottawa. Like, what stands out to you when you hear the name Wade Redden?
Like a consummate pro. And you nailed it right there, Ross, when you said there's not really one moment, because he wasn't flashy that way, right? Like, he didn't have those significant Alfie moments out there on the ice. He's a defenseman, unbelievable two-way player, really strong in the offensive zone as far as just having a lot of puck poise. I mean, that would probably be it right there. Poise with the puck, you know, just making everybody around you better. Because those were the years that I was paying attention, right? So the Wade Redden Chara years, probably in my early to mid-teens, was when I was really paying attention. And that was when I thought, between him and Chara, I mean, just a really I know they were very competitive. Both of them wanted to be the guy, but with Wade Redden specifically, I mean, just looking to him to be that calming presence in the back end, knowing he was predictable to a degree, really efficient shot. You know, he had that big 3-point night against Tampa in the playoffs after the tragic stuff that he was going through with his mother. So, you know, I think for me, it was just a sum of all of that. And again, anytime a player plays 800, in his case, it was 838 games, I think it was. Anyway, let's just assume close to 1,000 games with the same organization. It speaks volumes to the player's character. I said that about Chris Neal. I said that about Chris Phillips and Alfie. The same applies to Wade Redden. You play for that long with one organization, it means you're probably doing something right. You're a really good guy off the ice. I don't know what that says about my specific game, but for him, being with the same team for that long, you're a great dude off the ice. He was very involved in his community. We know how involved he was with his Wade's World initiative, with Chio, all the success they had on the ice, and managing to stick around for that long. Anyway, I know I'm repeating myself, but from what I understand, a great human being. I've had a couple interactions with him. Always seemed like a really nice, down-to-earth guy, very quiet and reserved. And that speaks to his character and his upbringing.
Yeah, and get this, played for the Ottawa Senators from age 19 to 30, 11 seasons, never missed the playoffs.
Yeah, like, there you go.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So a ton of success. I think he had a net. He was a net plus 150 something on his plus minus.
It's
insane.
I mean,
best in franchise history.
Best. There you go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was just a terrific player, incredibly consistent, and some real strong years. So again, yeah, I mean, it's well-deserved for sure.
And he secured the bag too, which we love to see. Yeah, Wade Redden plus 159, Alfie plus 153, and then you go all the way down to plus 109 in franchise history, which just so happened to be Wade Redden's D partners, Zdeno Chara, for all those.
There you go.
The best first pass in the game. And we'll pass it over to TSN and let you repeat all that later tonight. But we appreciate you for coming on and giving us the lowdown each and every week, Meth. Look forward to doing it again next week. And maybe we'll have to plan something out for next week. But I've got some ideas, so we'll keep everyone on that suspense. But Meth, it'll be great to see you back on the broadcast, man. It's been a void without you, so we're looking forward to that.
Appreciate that. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. We'll see you guys next week.
Stick taps to Meth for joining us. Always appreciate our conversations. Look forward to seeing him on the broadcast tonight. Pilsy, this guy, it's so incredible that we have a guy who's got 600 NHL games under his belt to be able to break down the game. All of his answers are just kind of relating back to what he experienced. That's so big.
Yeah, we love having Meth on the show here, and we missed him while he was away, that's for sure. So glad to have him back, and what better night to get a defenseman's take on things when Wade Redden is being honored into the Ring of Honor.
Absolutely. So you can catch Meth on the TSN broadcast tonight and catch us in the postcast after each and every Ottawa Senators game. It'll be Pilsy and the Martian tonight, breaking down the Senators have to win it for Wade Redden tonight, right? It's a must-win game.
Yeah, we'll call it a must win. Sure, you cannot lose these types of games, especially at home. You're honoring a player. You're coming off a good win with the Dads. Keep it going. Let's keep it riding. Cautiously optimistic.
And I just want to say thank you to the Ottawa Senators as well. They sent us the snazzy reverse retro jersey there, so we've got that up and coming. Note though, I mean, get it with a player name. Like the numbers are so big, like it's a decent. So the thing is, and I like it as a jersey in a vacuum. Next reverse retro though, we got to go crazy. Like I want full chaos mode because the teams that went chaotic, the Florida Panthers with baby blue, like they work. They really work. And if they don't, you wear it 5 times.
I'll say it once more. No Laurels was a utter disappointment. So we'll leave it.
But we appreciate the Ottawa Senators for sending these over, and it'll be a good ODR jersey for sure. Sickos, I like the Senegoth on the shoulder, and with the numbers, the enormous numbers, it's a good look. So shoot a message in the comments. Make sure we know that you're still watching here at the end of the show. A little extra. What name and number should I get on that jersey? Nice. I'll let the fans decide, just like you did with your Timmy jersey. But for today, we say goodbye. Any final thoughts, Pierre Pills, or we'll save them for the postcast?
Final thoughts is don't forget our merch store. Guys, Christmas is approaching. You want to get some Sens fans, some Locked On Senators listeners fans, some Christmas gifts? Go to our merch store.
All right. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan, and this has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.